Check. All right. So, seems like it's just me, myself, and I for right now. Opening up season 2, episode 7 of Static Plane Truth Live. Hello to all of the live viewers as y'all pile in. I'll sit here and talk to myself a little bit. Maybe what I'll do is pop open the YouTube page and take a look at the comments section, and if I possibly can. Oh, hey, Ray, Marie, hi everybody. Andres, yes, I am still on. So far, it's just me, myself, and I on the panel. So I am expecting a few people to show up. So we'll just give everyone a chance to sort of pile in. We've still got live viewers popping in, so apologies to those of you listening on the archives, but it is a beautiful, little hot and muggy Saturday afternoon here on the East Coast in South Kakalaka. I don't know about where you guys are at, but I'm glad it's not raining on my day off. It's rained, well, pretty much every day, and working outside is, it's actually has its ups and its downs because the temperatures here on the plane have been nearing 100 degrees. And so a little bit of cloud cover and rain doesn't hurt unless you're doing landscaping, of course. So who wants to mow lawns and weed whack in the rain, right? Not a lot of fun. So anyway, we've got a great show for you guys today. I've got a couple topics that I wanted to talk about, but I was hoping to see a few panel members pop in before I get into it. So what I'll probably do is just go ahead and read a little bit that I wrote for the show, and that'll give everyone some time to pop in here to the hangout and join the panel. Hopefully I sent the links out right, so I will probably check my Gmail and just see if anyone was like, the link doesn't work, but it's all good in the hood, and I hope y'all are doing well this fine Saturday. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I did mention this in the video that I released this past week, was, as a child and really my whole life, even this last year and a half, I've been sort of fascinated by the idea of extraterrestrial visitors, UFOs, and the prospect of space travel. I realize this is likely the result of the subtle yet totally pervasive programming abound in the culture in which we were all raised. Growing up in the American setting, space propaganda is nearly unavoidable, beginning in the cradle in many cases, and certainly, starting in the 40s and the 50s, leading up to the space programs. There was a lot of this sort of space propaganda, but most of our parents or grandparents were also raised in this sort of environment, but they had very little variety in terms of entertainment. So, I think they were lucky if you had 4 or 5 channels back in the day. So there really was an entire generation of people who were programmed with infinite space propaganda. Like Star Trek is a good example. Lost in Space might be going back a little bit further, but it's not like you had a whole lot of choice, like it is today. If I see some episode of Star Trek or Battlestar Galactica, I'll just change the channel and put it on Antiques Roadshow, right? I'd much rather watch somebody sell a belt buckle for $500,000 than watch some sci-fi garbage about infinite space. But the point is back then, back in the 40s and the 50s, and I guess even in the 60s, they didn't have 500 channels. They didn't have DVR. And so, if Star Trek was on, you were watching Star Trek. And I think that that was a trap for a lot of people. You know, a lot of our parents and grandparents were sort of trapped by that. And, you know, even to this very day, I think they just released a new Star Trek movie. So, you know, that's had a pretty long run. You know, they had the Next Generation and several different swings at that thing, and just keeps on going. Um, and I see this as being probably very intentional, but along with the fantasy and the romanticizing of space travel and aliens and, you know, other planets and that sort of thing, the study of and regurgitation of theoretical astrophysics sort of goes hand in hand with science fiction. I mean, the two sort of build upon each other. And you know, of course, Einstein comes up with the idea of wormholes or black holes or Einstein-Rosen bridges, and the next thing you know, you're seeing them used in science fiction films. You know, and so I think that the study and regurgitation of astrophysics as a science is far worse than the fantasy science fiction, because theoretical astrophysics is, of course, institutionalized programming, and it's institutionalized programming of science fiction fantasy, which is, I believe, exactly a psyop, or you know, a psychological operation. Um, the craziest thing about this particular psyop is that 99.9% of those who are responsible for perpetuating this fantastic deception are probably not even aware that they're contributing to the programming of all this fallacious information into the collective conscious. Um, it's really sad and ironic at once that people will, you know, sort of scoff at you and consider you some type of idiot for questioning theoretical astrophysics, which is itself totally unfounded and indeed has been debunked. Everything from gravity to orbital mechanics has been falsified. So this is sort of straying from the topic that I wanted to cover a bit, as I wanted to focus on the prospect of UFOs, you know, unidentified flying objects, which have apparently been in the realm of lore and even, you know, allegedly cave art, you know, going that far back. So for quite a long time. And they've allegedly been witnessed by millions of people over the years, and it's sort of gotten more frequent the last few decades. But some people even claim that they're literally abducted by aliens and whisked off to, you know, into the ether, or sometimes taken to underground or even underwater bases. Now, I'm not saying any of this is true, but I will certainly maintain that it's a fascinating prospect. And I wouldn't dare call all of those people, you know, who make these claims liars or crazy lunatics. So, for the sake of argument, let's just assume that there is actually some other race or multiple other races of beings that are visiting our world from some other world. Now, I'm not talking about flying through infinite space for a gazillion light years, but just assuming that the Earth is a stationary plane, and that there may be other, you know, geothermal pockets or other puddles with their own little solar systems peppered across the plane. I think something like that is very much possible. And so that makes the idea of visitors coming from these other worlds theoretically possible, right? Backing up a bit, as a child, two of my favorite books were Carl Sagan's Cosmos and Chariots of the Gods. And those are two good examples of, well, both of them are science fiction as far as I'm concerned, but Cosmos is presented as and is supposedly, you know, theoretical astrophysics at its finest, from its, you know, from its time, and is still even used to this day, and is sort of cited and used in reference to this day. Chariots of the Gods was more along the lines of this whole ancient alien theory, intelligent transpermia, where you've got, I don't know, little green men bringing DNA here to, to seed the origins of humans. So those two books in particular are probably good examples of how this sort of, propaganda has been hitting us from both sides. It's been hitting us in the right brain and in the left brain, if you will, right? Because the whole idea of fantasy and romanticizing infinite space and aliens and space travel is sort of an abstract thing that may be attractive to the more artistic side of our personality, while a book like Cosmos is going to be more attractive to the rational left brain thinker. And so, um, this is a very pervasive form of mind control. I remember when Return of the Jedi was first released in theaters, and I'd have to look at the year, but I went and saw it in theaters, and I must have only been 2 or 3 years old. I was very young, and of course, my parents took me to see it in the theater. And from what I've been told, I was not your typical screaming, crying baby. I didn't cry that much. I didn't make all that much of, issues for my mom, from what I've been told. But when Skywalker was dumped into Jabba's pit, to be fed to the giant monster underfoot, I remember being completely terrified. I screamed my head off in the theater and peed all over the seat. I wasn't embarrassed because I was 2 or 3, but I thought the damn thing was going to, jump out of the screen and devour the entire audience. As at that point in my life, I really didn't understand the difference between, fantasy or what's on the big screen and reality. And, again, I was like 3 anyway. So the point is, some of my earliest and most potent memories involved space propaganda. This is typical programming in the American culture, and is, as far as I'm concerned, is exactly trauma-based mind control, especially for a child incapable of differentiating between fantasy movies and reality. Nowadays, the programming has gotten so much more robust, pervasive, and realistic. I really feel sorry for the children growing up in the modern environment. The grandiose fantasies are presented in such a fashion that it's really unthinkable to imagine anything but infinite space, or to think that other planets and aliens don't exist and there are not any galaxies far, far away, not even a long time ago. So, such a thing is, of course, exactly fantasy, but is presented as theoretically factual, or at least theoretically possible, right? So, once you do realize the truth about the world being a stationary plane, and once you realize that space doesn't exist in the idea, in the way that we think it does, it becomes obvious that aliens couldn't possibly be traveling from some other planet or from some other galaxy, one of those little lights in the sky. That's impossible. So, sorry, I had to smack my dog. For one thing, though, in the heliocentric model, they'd be hard pressed to even find our theoretical little planet, and the distances involved would make traveling that far impossible. It's just theoretically impossible to travel light years. You'd have to travel for millions of years, right? So who can live millions of years? Oh, well, of course, then you have the theoretical sort of science fiction concept of suspended animation or cryostasis, which, of course, is all the technology is always 5 years away. Never can quite acquire it. Your average sci-fi nerd will also start regurgitating what they've heard about wormholes or the folding of the space-time continuum, and just making a shortcut that way. Yet all of this is exactly impossible, as, well, for one, space-time doesn't exist, gravity doesn't exist, and therefore dark matter doesn't exist, and the prospect of a wormhole or an Einstein-Rosen bridge, that sort of thing relies on the theory of gravity Since it doesn't exist, then the whole thing just becomes garbage. Gravity is a myth created to explain how it's possible for us to, remain stuck to the side of the spinning sphere in a vacuum, and is also conveniently used to explain everything that technically doesn't make any sense physically in the heliocentric model. So, gravity supposedly explains how orbiting bodies work, which orbital mechanics are theoretically impossible in a moving galactic system. Gravity is also used to explain how the stars comprising the galaxies remain stuck to their respective galactic center, which also doesn't work in many cases because gravity shouldn't be strong enough to bind galaxies together. They should be sort of exploding outward. And so theoretical physics comes up with the idea of dark matter to support that theory. So, of course, you have all of this conjecture on top of theory, and it's all just based on assumption. It's garbage. And, for people to classify theoretical physics as a science, to me, is ridiculous. Science is supposed to be demonstrable, repeatable, and falsifiable. So by definition, theoretical astrophysics is pseudoscience, and I just hate to break it to anyone who's spent a great deal of time or money on an education in theoretical astrophysics, but that isn't science. That's my point. Now, another thing too, the distances involved in the heliocentric model make theoretical intergalactic space travel totally impossible. And as I've stated, you can't use wormholes or the folding of space-time to make this work. Now, on the other hand, knowing full well that the Earth is a stationary plane that doesn't move at all, has never moved and will never move, then how could we get UFOs and little green men claiming to be from some other constellation, according to the abductees? Assuming the UFO phenomenon is actually occurring, which is assuming a lot, of course. There's a large segment of the flat Earth community or the globe Earth skeptic community who, for some reason, believe that we live inside a sort of a snow globe, a Truman Show dome, if you're familiar with the analogy. I'm not sure why so many people would be attached to the prospect of a glass dome in the sky or an iron dome in the sky, but there's honestly no evidence for this as far as I've seen, and I think there is instead pretty good evidence for the contrary. So I think that it's probably more likely that there is not a glass or iron dome in the sky, but that's just me. I've never been up there. So there have been a few accounts of polar navigators traveling to the legendary land beyond the poles, both north and south, which, if true, dispel the globe Earth hypothesis yet again completely. But more importantly, they open up the theoretical possibility for visitors from other worlds. Now, I don't claim to know for certain exactly what model best describes the flat stationary Earth, and perhaps we will never know the best model in our lifetimes. We might never have this thing fully figured out. That would be a shame, but of course we know for certain that the Earth isn't a spinning sphere, and that the moon and the stars are essentially a local phenomenon, which are secondary or subservient even to the far more massive and powerful Mother Earth. So if the legends, which, I guess they are legends, but if the legends of inhabited sort of, temperate lands beyond the north and south areas of Middle Earth, if you will, then the prospect for lands beyond those lands, it doesn't seem that far-fetched, I don't think. I often hear that this hypothesis is anti-Christian or anti-flat Earth because everyone knows the firmament is a glass iron dome in the sky and it's far too powerful for aliens to penetrate. But of course, this is missing the point. supposing there is no iron glass dome in the sky and the boundaries to the Earth are merely superficial, imaginary lines like the meridian lines on a map, then the prospect of extraterrestrial visitors, for lack of a better phrase, become theoretically possible, whereas the entire thing is an impossible fantasy in the heliocentric model. So, with all that being said, I am sort of appealing to the sci-fi geeks out there who have either, just really love space or really love aliens or, possibly seen UFOs or just believers in that sort of thing. For one, it makes a lot of sense why the government would pump out misinformation on the topic and deny it. The whole Project Blue Book thing from back in the 50s or whatever, the Roswell incident, for example, was originally published as a confirmed UFO crash in the desert. But the very next day, of course, the federal government brushed the whole thing under the rug and blamed it on a weather balloon, I think. They always have some type of excuse, be it swamp gas, weather balloons, misidentified airplanes, etc. So this opens up the question, is the government creating a hoax, UFO encounters, to perpetuate the infinite space deception? Or are they spinning the topic to appear in our minds as visitors from other worlds in outer space to cover up the fact that they're merely visiting from some other world in another region of this very same plane in which we reside, a region beyond the light and warmth of our sun, perhaps? And, really, I think this could go either way. People have often remarked that UFOs have appeared to get more and more sort of high tech as the decades go by, or more stylish, if you will, which really doesn't make sense in the heliocentric model. For instance, if a culture of intelligent life forms from another theoretical planet were advanced enough to travel light years and locate Earth, then they certainly wouldn't be more and more high-tech as the decades go by. I think we just had someone pop in. I got a bit of feedback. Hey, Kristen, how are you?
I'm so sorry, John, that I didn't turn off the other, and I think now I'm feeding back to you.
Okay. Yeah. No worries. We'll iron that out. So, can you hear me? Okay.
You sound great, but I am still feeding back.
Okay, so are you using speakers, or do you have a mic and a headset, or?
I'm just using speakers. Yeah, no mic, no headset, just the built-in mic.
Oh, for the laptop. Okay. Maybe if you could try turning your master volume down a hair. I mean, I know you still want to be able to hear, but that might help the feedback a bit.
Okay, yeah, and I'm so sorry to interrupt because I was gonna.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Definitely comment on what you were saying. It was great, and so now we're totally off track. It was great.
Well, no worries at all. So, sort of where I was at was, and I had mentioned this in the last video that I had uploaded, but I've sort of been a UFO fan my whole life, and when you first come into flat Earth, or when a lot of people first come into flat Earth, they're sort of, I guess you could say, funneled into this whole idea of an enclosed system for some reason. I'm not sure why. People liken it to a Truman Show enclosed dome for whatever reason, but that to a lot of people, automatically debunks the idea of extraterrestrial visitors and aliens and that sort of thing. And my point is, well, I haven't seen any evidence for a Truman Show, snow globe that we supposedly live in. And if aliens, or if these, whatever these beings are, which are, flying around in saucers, whatever they are, if they're not coming from a heliocentric standpoint, then they could be traveling from very close, right?
Indeed, and that I agreed with the last point you made too. That could be they might be able, sort of setting it up to be able to play it either way they have to. That appears to be the case to me, where whether they have to end up disclosing it or not, they're trying to, it seems, keep us redirected to out there instead of paying any attention to the earth plane we live on and what's going on and how we might be really having imposed boundaries, and there might be a lot more to this. They've got us believing that if aliens are going to show up, they're going to come from out there somewhere, not from this planet they have us believing this is. And that's where it seems to me they always have it set up to play it either way it goes, though. Sort of like whether the Democrat wins or the Republican wins, they've got both sides funded, right? And it's really all one same. It's just one side. There really are not two sides in essence when it comes down to it. It's just there's this one truth, and they've got an interest in covering it up, and so that it appears to us to be something very different than it is. And it seems like I'm not feeding back now, so I hope I sound all right.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Oh, very good. And I saw that Antonio also joined us, it looks like, and so hello there. How's it going?
It's all good. I'm just, I'm running a bit late. I'm just catching up on what you two guys are talking about. So I've literally just jumped on and come in here. You're talking about the Project Bluebeam, or what hoaxes might be pulled on people?
Well, I guess the gist of it would be, okay, for many years, and I guess you could say even going back to cave drawings, and I think Leonardo did some paintings with UFOs in them. And so I guess the premise would be, assuming UFOs are a real phenomenon, then in the heliocentric model it's just impossible, and science fiction writers have to come up with things like folding space-time and puncturing holes into the space-time continuum with a with a wormhole or whatever, and all of this is of course ridiculous. But in the stationary plane model, if there are lands beyond the north and south regions, then the prospect becomes very much theoretically possible. And I think that, again, for some reason, there's a pretty large segment of the flat Earth community who thinks that we live, inside of a Truman Show type of globe, or Truman Show type of dome for some reason, and so that sort of automatically disqualifies the idea of aliens, and people just dismiss it immediately as a hoax, which it may be. But I guess the question is like, for example, with Roswell, you had the newspapers and I believe even a military official coming out and saying, yeah, we recovered a crashed flying saucer, and the very next day they said, no, whoops, it was a weather balloon. And so the question is the government covering this up, or is the government actually the one, perpetrating these sort of UFO encounters to perpetuate the heliocentric idea of visitors from other worlds? And so, yeah, I think that disclosure could be sort of like their next move, right? So, so one day the president walks up to the podium, and of course he's green screened in. I don't even think he sits at the Oval Office anymore. He just green screens it. But so yeah, the president comes up to the podium and says, okay, my last thing that I'm gonna do as president is I'm gonna disclose aliens. Yeah, they're coming from the Draco constellation or the Crab Nebula, and I could see this as being totally a move that the government pulls, because they've really been sort of tantalizing conspiracy theorists with this for, I don't know, 50 years, maybe longer than that. And so, yeah, I guess, go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing, indeed. Yeah, it seems they've been possibly setting up the conspiracy theory sector of society, movement. I don't know what word we should call it, but it seems they've almost set it up. That way they can kind of, I've got the feedback again. Bummer. Maybe I have to jump out and come back in, actually.
No, I think I have to keep muting myself again. I forgot, sorry.
Yeah, Kristen,
oh, no worries.
What I found myself, are you working from a laptop?
I am actually. I've got the same arrangement that I've had every other time, and normally we don't have me feeding back, and so whatever, I can drop out.
It happens. I've noticed that it happens with me also sometimes. If I change my laptop, how its relationship to where I'm sitting, if I change it just its angle a little bit, suddenly I'm causing feedback. Other times I'm not, you know, and it's whether I sit forward or sit back or a whole bunch of things. So if you're hearing feedback, just move your laptop a tiny bit or move yourself back and see whether it carries on. And
yeah,
this
I
is just
think you,
I've noticed for myself.
nailed it. I think you nailed it. Thank you for that, because I believe it's possible I'm sitting a little closer to it than usual. And actually, I just moved it back as you were telling me that idea, and it seems that I'm not feeding back now.
There you go. Cool. So if I start feeding back, please remind me. Now, hey, what you were saying about yes, so Roswell. There was a documentary called Dreamland made. In this documentary, there was footage shown of whomever it is, that the highest ranking person in the military in the United States, who was announcing on television that they were currently back engineering electromagnetic propulsion systems from recovered alien craft. Those words. We are currently back engineering electromagnetic propulsion systems from recovered alien craft. Those words. Now, this is from the military. When people talk about disclosure, disclosure's been happening all along. Now, whether they're disclosing something to hoodwink the world, or whether they're disclosing something because the hand has been forced, because so many people are seeing bizarre things in the sky, is anybody's guess. But when we go back towards, you know, whether we lean towards a dome of a Truman Show type, well, outside that dome, there's the rest of the world in the Truman Show. So either the dome has an outside of it, which is normal, like in the Truman Show, or the dome has an outside of it, outside which is the angelic entity, or it's not a Truman Dome and it's just an expanse. But the truth is, to say that it's definitely one or definitely the other, we should all shy away from that, because until we know, we don't know. I lean towards infinite plane. I lean towards infinite plane, but I will always say that I lean towards it because I don't know. So
well, that makes three of us on this call that I know that much about, and that's good to know. And yet, I'm open to, hey, if it's dome, great. But like what John said earlier, I have to echo that, as people say, that I agree there's no conclusive evidence to lean me toward a dome as of yet. Everything I've seen that could be construed as evidence for a dome-shaped ceiling, no more would actually point to a dome shape any more than a flat ceiling. And for me, I don't see any reason why it can't be a flat ceiling, but there are so many people that are convinced that it has to come down and connect to the Earth. And of course, we were told in the clues that they had found the solid upper and outer edges. Okay, it doesn't mean it's totally accurate what we were told in the clues narrative, but I just need to point that out, because obviously that piece of work that the clues is converted a lot of people into believing the flat Earth is a plausible reality. So anyway.
Yeah, it did. And I think that a lot of, you know, the sort of dome origins come from the military propaganda piece, which was Operation Fishbowl, where allegedly, you know, the Ruskies and the United States were supposedly launching nuclear missiles up at the dome. And I've seen the footage. It looks like a cartoon to me. It doesn't look real. And also, of course, I doubt that nuclear bombs even exist. I don't even think that the atom exists, as you know, we're led to believe, or the way that we're taught. And so it's just more theoretical fantasy as far as I'm concerned. I think that also what leads people to believe in a sort of dome is because the stars, you know, in a clear night, the stars appear to be very close to the horizon. But as far as I can tell, that again, that's just the operation of perspective. Something that's, you know, directly overhead is going to appear further up, and something that is, you know, say 1,000 miles away is going to, you know, drop lower and lower towards the horizon. And so I think that's
Yes.
all that is just optics. Now, in terms of a dome, I think that we probably, and I agree with Bob Nodell on this, is that we probably have some form of an electromagnetic vortex in play here that would create sort of the top half of a toroidal shape, or the top half of a toroid. So, you know, if you're looking down on the Earth, it would look like you know, a donut, sort of. And so I could see that as happening, but any sort of physical dome, you know, I haven't seen the evidence for it, and anyone claiming to have evidence for the dome connecting with the ground somewhere south of the Antarctic, again, I haven't seen that either. But you know, sort of back on point with this whole alien UFO thing, yeah, I see the government, again, it can go either way. If there are actually visitors coming, then the government and the powers that ought not be would want us, you know, looking up instead of looking out, or, you know, parallel to the ground. And to me, yeah, that's like the perfect cover or the perfect reinforcement for, you know, the whole sci-fi movement. I mean, there's millions and millions of people that are convinced that, you know, aliens exist, and many of them believe that aliens sort of seeded the origins of mankind. And this, to me, is very deeply rooted programming.
So,
And
John, John, can I just jump in, ask you
Sure.
two guys what you think of the idea of flat Earth fiction? Do you see, one of the ways that we all know that one of the ways that we were forced to accept the globe model was science fiction, not just books, but Star Wars, Star Trek, all of the fictions, all of the sci-fi that were off-world, 1999, all, you know, Independence Day, all of these things are through fiction, through science fiction. So I'm thinking, come on, who's going to start writing flat Earth science fiction? It doesn't have to have flat Earth in the title, as long as the protagonist and the story is engaging enough, and at some point there's a resolution where people figure out or see that the world is flat. That's a really good way of getting it out there into the collective consciousness. So
Well,
what
It
do you
might
think?
already be happening.
yeah, and I was going to say I've seen a lot of that sort of thing, but I see that as problematic because, and then I see your point, but I see it as problematic because we really need to, at least as far as I'm concerned, we need to stick with what's, you know, demonstrable, what's repeatable, what's falsifiable, stick with the science. And there may well be, I mean, I still sort of thumb through YouTube when I've got some spare time, and, you know, I'll do a YouTube or Google search for flat Earth videos. And here lately, I hate to say it, I've just found a lot of garbage where, I mean, there are people talking about, I don't know, Sith Lords from other planets and this sort of thing, and I'm like, oh my goodness. But I don't think we necessarily need fiction so much as we need, you know, cogent arguments, more proofs, and there's a lot of really great proofs out there, and we've all sort of covered them, and we've all sort of watched them and read about them and demonstrate them. But there's always more stuff around the corner, I think. But yeah, this whole UFO thing, the government would want to spin it so that we are totally, you know, snowed. That they're not, and I think that's maybe why, if it is a real phenomenon, if there really are, you know, these unexplained saucers flying around, and the government's not doing it, I could see them wanting to keep it under wraps and to keep it sort of out of the public mind and nothing to see here, folks, because what it does is it stirs up all this speculation, and the speculation, of course, is going to lead to other planets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and also the question of the crater. So that's the other big hot button it brings up, right?
Right. Well, and then of course you've got the Catholic Church, the Pope saying that when the aliens come, we'll baptize them, and so you've got the religious community being prepped for it, sort of psychologically, pre-programmed for it.
I think that's a little bit arrogant. Here are these beings that are more advanced than us that can come to here. We can't go there, and somehow they're behind us in terms of religion. Maybe they come here and they say, "Hey, you guys, let's come and baptize you into the truth."
Right.
That happen?
Well, they could indeed use the aliens to usher in the final phase of their one world religion, which, if people aren't aware, the religion is perhaps the biggest part of this new world order they've been creating and putting in place for a very long time. It's a new economic system, it's a new form of government, but most importantly, it's a new form of religion, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go back to the sort of biblical argument and the foreshadowing of this great deception, I believe wholeheartedly that the spherical Earth, infinite space, heliocentric model is the great deception, because I really can't think of anything else in history that fooled the whole world. And even the elect, and I guess what the Bible means by the elect would be, I guess you could say whoever the chosen ones are, the saved, the evangelical Christians, the believers, whatever it is. But yeah, even the elect, everybody, every last person that has been, I guess you could say, indoctrinated or educated in this modern environment, the modern culture, believes this. They've been fooled by it. And so, yeah, the whole alien visitors and a sort of alien takeover is a logical next step to that. Now, another thing that a lot of UFO abductees report, if they are to be believed, again, we're assuming, just for argument's sake, that this sort of thing is going on. One of the things that comes back a lot is a hybridization program. So where that they'll apparently abduct women and they'll fertilize them, and then they'll get abducted several times throughout their lives, and a lot of times they have no waking memory of this. It's only through hypnotic regression that they're able to pull these memories out of the depths of their minds. But then years later they'll be shown what looks like a human child. And they'll be told telepathically, this is your child. And then of course you've got men who claim to be abducted, and the aliens, whomever they are, wherever they're coming from, are extracting DNA from the men and fertilizing these eggs. So apparently it's not just a one or two isolated incident sort of thing, but it's a widespread thing that's cropping up all over the place. Now, this could all be 100% bull. I mean, agreed, but again, assuming that it's true, then it makes a lot of sense to me that they would do this, because let's just imagine that for the last 50 years, instead of NASA, we had Earth Exploration Agency that was dedicated to exploring what's beyond the superficial boundaries to our world. And let's just say hypothetically we found another puddle with a solar system, a geothermal pocket similar to ours. Then let's just say hypothetically the methane gas content was too high, or there wasn't enough oxygen in the environment. It could be a slightly different environment. So we couldn't necessarily move over there, but I think that we do have the technology to genetically, over a few generations, to genetically adjust to another environment. I mean, does that make sense to you guys? I mean, what do you think about that?
For sure, that's an interesting hypothesis, and it also makes me think of the, pardon me, the recent research, and when I say recent, I'm saying over the last many decades, and how long it's really been going on, I have no idea, but into the technology of biospheres, right? Like that whole experiment they did, and there was 11 people or something that lived in there for so long, and I forget where that was now, but this biosphere, I believe, It was called, unless I've got the term slightly, because there's another term that's interchangeable that's very similar, biodome, biosphere, but maybe they've been working with that technology, that kind of dome, artificial terrarium environment technology, to see if they can find another avenue to create an environment that we could live in a geographical location where otherwise we would not be able to be supported by that environment, to just live there naturally without some enclosure to make it possible. So just had to throw that in too as another adjunct to what you're saying, possibly.
Well,
you mentioned also, John. Sorry, John. You mentioned also the great deceit, the great delusion. What is it called again?
The great deception.
Yeah, the great deception that will deceive even the elect. So I did a quick reference check on elect and synonyms to it, because I suspected that elite was one of the synonyms. It is indeed. If you look up the synonym for elect, you won't find it. If you look up the synonyms for elite, you'll find it. It's the fourth choice down on thesaurus.com. Sorry, fifth choice down on your left column. The elite are the elect.
Wow.
So it will deceive even the elite.
Well, you know, to even be more on point with it, what I would want to do, and I haven't done this, but I would go back to the original, I guess would be Hebrew or Aramaic, or maybe even the first Greek translation, to see what the original word was, because what I've found, especially in the King James Bible, is that certain words were translated sort of poorly, and you can't necessarily say it was intentional because, you know, of course it went from, you know, Aramaic or Hebrew to Greek to Latin to Old English to English, and so there's a lot of room for mistranslation there. But yeah, you know, I see what you're saying, and you know, that's probably something that's worth researching deeper. You know, what exactly did it mean by the elect? But in the context, it seems like, you know, what it means is that it's going to deceive even those who you know, are pure of heart, and, you know, not evildoers, and not like, you know, Satanists or whatever. And I don't know what the best term would be, but yeah, I would look at the original. But going back, you know, so what we would do if we found another world that was slightly, you know, toxic to us, right? We would either terraform the area, or we would, I think it may be, you know, a little bit odd because, you know, the things like genetic modification are technically illegal in America, but another way to do it would be to genetically modify our offspring through, you know, crossbreeding with the local population to that world, and that way, you know, we'd have sort of the antibodies and the ability to survive it, or, you know, at least our great-grandchildren would. But then when you look at what's been going on with our world since, I guess, the Industrial Revolution, is we've really, if you think about it, we've slowly been terraforming our world to be less suitable for human and really all life on Earth. When you dig up you know, fossil fuels that are not made out of fossils, but when you dig up petroleum and start burning it and getting rid of the rainforests, which is sort of the Earth's natural ability to scrub out hydrocarbons and replace it with oxygen, then yeah, you're sort of eventually going to reach a tipping point to where it's irreversible, and you're going to have an environment that would literally, you know, the air itself would be poisonous to us, but maybe it would be comfortable for some other, you know, form of intelligent being that's coming from an adjacent world on the plane. What do you think?
I think it could be. There are two kind of clear ways we can look at it. We can look at just stupidity, just straightforward human stupidity, or a very dedicated plan. It's very difficult to ascertain which. But human stupidity, that's definitely something that we could say it's, you know, it's definitely plausible that this fracking that's going on, there's basically just spoiling the earth. It's spoiling natural reserves. It's just spoiling all kinds of places. That, yeah, human stupidity for sure. It doesn't preclude aliens coaxing the humans into doing something really stupid that would benefit them, you know. But it's difficult to arrive at either conclusion because
Well,
we don't know.
I don't think it would take too much coaxing because one of the things that and I was into this sort of research long before I was looking at flat Earth, but if you look at what are often described as fallen angels, but by the cultures that were visited by them, like, you know, you had the Anunnaki, you had really every ancient culture who claims that their civilization was seeded by, you know, superior beings that came from the stars, or so the superior beings claimed. And oftentimes, and almost in every case, these beings were sort of giving people technologies. And there's lots of examples of this, but you know, giving people technology. And so if you look at what's happened with our technology in the last 100 years, we've gone from, you know, horse and buggy pretty much to, you know, airplanes and cars and TV in every house, and technology has just exploded in the last 100 years. And people, especially compromised people, often are not too worried about the, you know, the long term, and personal gain and personal comfort are paramount, especially in the American sort of society. And so, yeah, I don't think it would take so much coaxing to say, well, you won't have to you know, walk anymore. You can just get in a car or get in a bus or get in a plane, and all you have to do is burn this specific stuff after you process it this way. So I don't know. I'm not necessarily saying that aliens or extraterrestrials from some other world on the plane necessarily gave us the technologies that we have. But yeah, you had mentioned, I think one of the guys from the military, if I'm not mistaken, was Robert Salas, who was missile silo operator, who claims that a UFO came and shut down, I think it was like 10 nuclear, you know, quote unquote nuclear missile sites simultaneously. So, yeah, I just see this all as it could really go either way. It could either be the military just strictly making this stuff up, coming up with technologies, but if there are others visiting us and they do have superior technology, then I could also see the military, like you said, back engineering the technology. Which that sort of narrative has been going on since way back with Bob Lazar. Right? Who was sort of a third-party contractor working with some government agency, and he claims that they found a bunch of UFOs, and he was responsible for trying to back-engineer the propulsion systems, which were very complex, and they used a sort of fuel that was element 119. Am I wrong? Isn't that what it was?
That's the one, yeah. Well, this back engineering of weapons, it's something that's gone on since warfare started. You know, when the ballista was first invented, which was basically like a much bigger crossbow, the ballista, the first time the enemy captured a ballista, there you go. Now they have all the know-how they need to make ballistas. They just take it, pass it over to Archimedes or whoever, and they'll develop a system for manufacturing them, you know, a production system. Back engineering of weapons from the enemy, from any enemy, is part and parcel of warfare. So if we look at, say, the defense forces, the Earth defense forces, whatever nation, if they consider themselves to be at war with any of these others that might or might not be there, then they would definitely back engineer anything they captured that they could engineer. That's absolutely irrefutable. They would definitely do that. There's no chance that they would say, oh, let's just keep it as a relic. They would, no, that goes against all war. So, yeah, doesn't mean that they are doing, doesn't mean it's true, but if it was, then they certainly would back engineer. We have Event Skeptic who is showing some of the beauty of nature outside the house. How you doing, Ronnie?
Hey, yeah, you take care, neighbor. Hey, Antonio. Yeah, no, I was just basically sharing some of the flowers that I've been growing this summer for my mom. Come down to her place, and these are hydrangea. They came out beautiful. These ones here, they look almost like military colors. I thought it was interesting to have flowers that show camo. And yeah, I seen you guys on, and I wanted to jump on and be a part of the conversation because for the last little while I've been going around, getting sucked into this whole paranoia drama stuff, and I wanted to share with you and your viewers, Morgal, that it's not quite who I am, and there's so much more to this than, just some of the things I've done,
Everybody can get thrown for a loop, because we've all had paradigm shift into the flat Earth. That we might find something that flips us for a loop. We actually have experience of that. We were flipped for a loop and landed on a flat Earth. So it's not surprising that, everybody can get flipped for a loop. And, it happens. All you need is a gay video, for instance, and it will throw 1 million people for a loop.
Yeah, and we got to talk about that. What was that?
Okay. Yeah. Have you seen the latest that I've put up?
Well, no, I got a link to the oh man, daytime, nighttime, sexy.
Yeah. So I'll give you a quick breakdown of the story. Last Sunday, watching Globebusters, Patricia says, "Oh my God, have you seen this?" I look at it. It's a new Flat Earther website called Flat Earth Slam Dunk. My first videos I used to call Flat Earth Slam Dunk 1, 2, 3, 4. So somebody made up a website called Flat Earth Slam Dunk. I watched this video. Immediately I realized the person that made this website is a guy called Peter Igo. He's a friend of mine. The video they made were outtakes or pieces of something that I was working with them. They made this video with this dancing and this singing and all this horrible stuff. Spliced words together, added elements to it that never happened, and just spliced this film. I was livid when I saw this because I thought, okay, what if my niece, who's 10, what if she sees this? Okay, it's offensive. They didn't tell me that they'd released it. By the time I was watching it, there was 109 views already. So I'm thinking, this is a dirty trick. It's a joke, but it's a dirty trick, okay? So I contact them. They very quickly pull it. By then, other people had mirrored it and were spreading it around. So I took ownership of it. Now remember, I'm livid with these guys. So I make a video. I have footage of them. I make a video, a brief video, with some of the footage from this gay dance video, reversed, where they had reversed the original footage. So I reversed that footage to show the actual action I was doing and showing their faces. Then they make an explanation apology video where they explain this was a joke played on Antonio. It was not supposed to offend anyone, including Antonio. It was just a joke and so on. And then they send me and some of the things that we shot where I'm saying things. What I was doing was I was I recorded a moon landing video where I was supposed to be on the moon, jumping across on a space hopper to the lunar lander, kicking the lunar lander, and then swimming to the space station. All of this footage we recorded. And then we recorded sound bites that I might want to use. For instance, if I'm arguing with somebody who's horribly homophobic, I might say, "Oh, don't be so nasty." If I'm arguing with somebody who's I don't know, really prudish, I might be like, "Yo, how you doing?" Just different voices. So they had taken the gay ones, not all the gay ones, and made this gay video. Now, it's a joke. Obviously, they know I'm not gay, so it was literally just a joke. It fell flat on its face. It messed up. They had to apologize. They had to go into kind of going around copywriting people left, right, and center. I was copywriting people who were mirroring this video, putting really horrible comments. This was just some stupid prank that went wrong that they tried to do on me. Since then, they sent me footage with the green screen behind me when they hadn't processed it of me doing some of the clips that were spliced into the thing. Like, oh, sexy. That was it. It was just, and that was it. And that's the story. So I have that on my channel, on both of my channels. You can go and see it. I think it's the latest thing I uploaded. It's just a very brief thing where you can see I'm stood there in front of a green screen doing some of the actions and stuff that was in that infamous gay dancing video.
Well,
And
at least they were friends and they were good enough to take it down. But yeah, it goes to show that you really have to be careful because, well, first of all, I got to admit, I thought it was pretty funny. But
yeah, lots of people found it funny. I personally didn't because I could see how it could offend older people.
If it was me, I'd be pissed, and especially if it was somebody that I considered a friend, you know, did that. If there was a disclaimer in the beginning or end of it saying that this is just a, you know, just a prank for fun, and I had nothing to, you know, you, Antonio, had nothing to do with it, then, you know, I could see that. But that, yeah, I would have been really mad, and so I'm glad they took it down. And I gotta admit also that when I saw it, it did seem as if that it was done intentionally, like as if you had intentionally participated in it. But if you had done some pre-recording stuff with these guys and they were being clever with the editing, then I could see, you know, how that was possible. That would be the only way I could see it as possible, is if you had you know, in some way colluded with them, but they took what you had done out of context, from what I gather. So
but the way they tricked me into it, you see, we're pals, you know, we will prank each other. I've done all kinds of things to them. I've won bets that they've stupidly laid against me that I couldn't prove the world was flat. I proved it, and they just went around screaming like little girls and then refused to pay the freaking bet. But anyway, I've got them in the past with all kinds of pranks, and they've got me in the past with pranks. They did this one. The way they tricked me into going down and doing the footage, because they then explained to me the whole of the video, me on the moon, me swimming to the freaking ISS, all of that we filmed, none of it, they had no intention of creating the video, that video about, you know, which was going to be anti-NASA video, okay? So, I mean, I was going to be jumping around in slow-mo, you know, the whole, you know, the same as they did with the astronauts, just to show how easy it is, yeah? So they didn't make any of that. That was just a pretense by which they got me down there. And they said, they know that I'm going to do something gay and something not crude, but that has a double meaning, like pulling out your ego and all the misinformation that's been rammed down your throat and having to pull it out before you can become a flat earther, because you can't whilst you've got that shit inside you. Excuse my French. So the preamble to it was, they said, let's bury the hatchet, come down, we will make you whatever video you want. I said, okay, I want this video on the moon, can you do it? They said yes. I said, can you also make some sound bites? And they said, well, if we're going to make sound bites, we can make you an intro if you want to your videos. I said, yeah, well, give me the sound bites, I'll compile it into my own intro. And in it, I did say things like, oh, sexy, gay, but I also said it in a Spanish voice and in a cool voice, like, yo, and in my voice, okay? So I did all 4 characters. Just about everything that you saw was done as all 4 characters, apart from the pulling out the stuff that's been sickening you in your stomach. That was just an off-cut. That wasn't going to be in characters, you know? So, and that was me saying to the lads, I said, look, guys, you're never going to see the flat earth until you do this. Blah! And you pull your ego and everything that's been rammed down your throat, but you'll feel so much better afterwards. And then Graham came back and said, what was that you were doing? So I then did it again. And I said, it's just pulling out everything you've been made to swallow.
Well, and you know, one thing I would say too, because I take that sort of thing real seriously, and I would hate to be, you know, misrepresented and taken out of context. But seeing how they're your pals, obviously you're not going to sue them. But technically, if somebody records you and it's under certain pretenses. And then they use it to essentially, you know, slander your character, then, you know, they're liable for that, and you could technically have a lawsuit. So I would just say, yeah, I would just say you probably owe them one. So they should watch out for a prank. But
well, what they've done since, John, is they've said to me, oh, we've got all this other footage. You're going to let us make you. How can we make it up to you? We can make you into a superhero. You can fly around, you know. You can, because some of the swimming stuff, you know, to the ISS.
Well, honestly, I wouldn't get in front of a green screen with any of those guys around. That's just me personally.
I mean, with the footage that they already captured, they're saying, "Look, how much?" I tell you what it was. I was determined. I was going to sue them. $5,000, open and shut case. They wouldn't even argue it. Okay. This is what I was determined to do. But then Glenn called me, and he was actually hurt. You know, the guy, you know when you can hear in somebody's voice that they're hurt at the realization that they've done something that's offended you, which they didn't want to offend you. It was supposed to be a joke, but now they see it through your eyes, and they're gutted. This is the expression we use in the UK. When somebody is actually sickened at the thought that they might have offended somebody they like. I know this feeling.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's you know, it's water under the bridge, and you know, so that's all good. But okay, so that's settled, and so anyway, back to what we were talking about, and Event Skeptic. Did you have anything in specific that you wanted to mention? I noticed that you had said you had been through for a loop recently. What's going on with you, bud?
Well, no, I'm good. I'm good. I just found that, you know, even with the video in question that we're speaking of, if somebody thinks, oh, that's going to stop the flat Earth or any truth, I wanted to add in that, you know, absolutely nothing can stop what the truth is. It just needs to be, you know, realized and revealed. So at the end of the day, even if somebody does something like that for fun, who will we to really judge? You know, I was quick to go around judging other people for, let's say, not believing that some of the basalt mountains could be trees. Like, I really don't think that it's really anybody's position to say who should say what. So whether or not Antonio was involved in that, you know, who really cares? Who are we to really mock him? Besides what he said was, you know, children seeing it might, in his family, like I have a daughter, if she was to see me doing like that, you know, she'd probably think I was crazy. But that's about it, man. I don't think it's, the truth is the truth, right?
Yeah,
that's
right.
When people have said to me, I can't believe you've done this, this is going to be so damaging to the flat Earth, it's like, dude, nothing that anybody does is going to make the world start spinning.
That's so true.
The truth is bulletproof. It's indestructible. It's frigging the ring in the Lord of the Rings, if you want to call it that. Mind you, that one was destructible, but truth isn't, you know? So nothing. Yeah, and I don't mean you can go around and be a freaking idiot and let yourself get filmed doing these things, and you know, but the truth is
that should be a t-shirt. Cast flat Earth into the fires of Mount Doom.
Yes, that's what it'll take.
And the other thing I was going to ask you, John, sorry Antonio, the other question I wanted to ask was, I had noticed you guys were doing some map work, and I'd like to state it here for everyone to hear. I'm not, you know, against anybody. If we can come up with different maps and different ideas of the flat Earth, I'm all for it. So I don't know if you guys are going to get into any topics dealing with the projections, and if you wanted to, and like I said, John and Kristen, Antonio, everybody, you know, do what you guys want to do. I want to be involved and find the truth.
And we can definitely get into some of the projections. That sort of the main topic I kicked off with, and we've got, you know, plenty of time. But I guess in a nutshell, and I'm sorry if I just have to keep re-explaining, but just to encapsulate it, and it's probably good to just sort of remind everybody, this is Static Plane Truth, Season 2, Episode 7, and I'm your host, John Christopoulos, the Morgile. We've got on the panel Kristen Wolf, Event Skeptic, and Antonio Subrats. So what we were talking about before you popped on, Event Skeptic, was the idea of you know, UFOs, unidentified flying objects, extraterrestrial visitors, whatever they are. If this is a real phenomenon, so assuming that it's true, assuming that people are seeing crafts from other worlds and being abducted by aliens, and possibly who have a genetics modifying program to crossbreed their species with ours, and or to sort of modify the atmosphere of the Earth through our own sort of greed and love of comfort. And so sort of poison the air in order to make it more comfortable for this alien species. So we were really sort of going off the deep end on this assumption that there are alien visitors, but it seems to me like the government wants us to believe in them, although of course what they do is they sort of introduce the topic and then deny it, and I think it could go either way. I think that it could go either the way that the government is sort of fabricating this whole thing in order to make people, look up into the sky and say, well, which star system or which constellation are they coming from? And instead of doing that, instead of looking across the plane where there may be other worlds. So, assuming that this is true, assuming that there are visitors from other worlds, then in a flat Earth reality, then they'd have to be coming from somewhere close by. And it would actually make some sense that according to those who are abducted, that they kind of look like us. They've got, 2 arms, 2 legs, and 2 eyes, which is pretty humanoid if you ask me. So the idea becomes theoretically possible. So what are your thoughts on that? Because I've been sort of into the whole, UFO, ET thing for, well, really as long as I can remember, right?
Yeah. Well, I heard you bring up Bob Lazar. I know when I started basically truthing or truth seeking, he jumped up on my screen and he did the whole back engineering from the propulsion system. I don't know if you're aware of it.
Right, yep.
Where they talked about a higher element 115, and it's really, really interesting. And it seemed that basically he was basically the one who converted the carburetor to a hydrogen burning machine, and then it's basically bomb techniques, so they shut it down. I enjoy that type of thinking, and for me, it does beg a question: is there more land? And I know I saw once there was an Illuminati video. When I first started, before there was a flat Earth, it was mostly these. I believe, John, you even have done a few really good videos with the same type of flow that was showing that the corruption in the media was showing all the different Illuminati agendas with the bloodlines and the crown. And there was a clip of the Rothschilds in some castle in the sky. And, I could tell it was real, but I knew that I had never seen this part of the Earth before. I know there's many places I haven't seen, but it almost looked like the peaks of the buildings were like in the clouds. I don't know if anybody has any comments on that.
Yeah, I'm not familiar. Not familiar with that, but I don't doubt it. The Rothschilds have more money than probably everyone in the world combined. Somehow they did get that rich. But one thing I do know is in the movie Eyes Wide Shut by Stanley Kubrick, the interior sort of mansion party scene. No, I'm sorry, the exterior mansion party scene. Even though the movie supposedly took place in New York, I think it was a U.S. city. When he goes to the mansion, the exterior was the Rothschild, or one of the Rothschild mansions in London, and beautiful place, obviously. But of course, the Stanley Kubrick, who was probably, there's a lot of good evidence that suggests that he was involved with the faking of some of the moon landing footage. He died right after that movie was shot, while it was still being edited, if I'm not mistaken. And so there was, probably, I think, 10 or 15 minutes of film that was, never seen and never going to be seen. And so I'm just wondering if somehow Kubrick was trying to, well, obviously he was connecting the Rothschild family with this whole sort of upper echelon underground secret society. So maybe straying a little off topic, but yeah, that's the Rothschilds for you.
Well, he's the mayor of the Crown, the town in London, the city of London. Antonio probably knows much more about this than me. And in Canada, all of the area that's not habitated by humans is called Crown land. And I believe throughout the United States as well is also Crown land. And the other point I was going to make about the movies, if anyone has seen X-Men Chia, it was a movie about how AI technology was being created. Has anyone seen that?
No, I haven't seen any of the recent X-Men movies, but yeah,
It's not X-Men.
I can tell you this, guys. The Crown is the actual corporation behind the royal family. So you know how we have the whole Freeman movement, it's legal law, legalese, natural law versus acts of parliament, and so on. Well, the Crown, what's called the Crown, is the corporation side of the royal family. The royal family is a family, you know, with lineage and whatnot. The Crown is the business, is the actual corporation. So the Rothschilds are the head of that corporation.
The mayor, basically, right? Mayor Rothschild, they always call him.
That's it. That's it.
And
they also have.
Take control
It's also interesting to know that in the British government, they actually have, in the House of Commons, which is where laws are first made up, then they're written as bills sent to be ratified by the House of Lords. We have these two different bodies, the same as the US, but you know, kind of a bit different. Well, in the House of Commons, where laws are first discussed, new rules for the nation, discussed and passed around, well, in that, we have a character who's not voted in by the people, who works exclusively for the banks on behalf of the Crown. That character is called the Remembrancer. Anybody who wants to look it up, you'll find details of what this character does, what he is and what he does. And his job is to sit there, make sure no laws are passed against the Crown, the corporation, or against banks. Anything that's going to harm the banks won't pass because this character sat there. He can veto anything, and he vetoes it on behalf of the royal family. So it's a permanent position.
The Fed, the Vatican, the 300, basically everything. And just lastly, before I mute and let you guys go on, hopefully we can talk about some apps later, is Morgal, the movie was called X-Men Chia. It was an amalgamation of Google put into artificial female. It's a great movie. I recommend it to anybody because it does show some of the things that could be alien technology, but I'm not stating whether or not I believe in people from outside of our realm. It's very possible. But in the movie, to get to where the guy that owns the Google guy, he has to fly, and it's like a 3-day or a 7-day flight. And, you know, he's like, wow, did you notice how far it was till you got here? And, you know, there were some definite hints and some significant truths that were dropped there about maybe places that we've never been. And that's just why I wanted to interject that.
Oh, awesome, man. Yeah, and artificial intelligence is definitely something that's on the horizon, I believe. Nanotechnology as well. Looks like we got Pizza Tea on. What's up, Thomas?
What's up? I can't believe we got Antonio on here. Antonio, I love your video, man. Did you make that? I truly do like it. Someone tried to send it to me and I was like, what? And I thought, daytime, nighttime. I'm into it, man. No comment?
Hey, he just stepped away. It's Patricia. Sorry it's so dark. He just stepped away for a minute, but he'll be back. So, hi, everyone.
Hey, Patty.
Hi. I'm listening in the background, so Antonio will be back in a minute.
Hi, Patricia.
Awesome.
Nice to see you.
Hello, Ronnie.
Today, somebody on the internet, I've been looking for him for almost 20 years, and he was commenting on my videos today, and he didn't even realize it was me. So the Flat Earth brought two friends together after 20 years. Fucking epic.
Awesome, awesome. So real quick, just we'll sort of get a brief census of the panel members, and I'll go first. But I was pretty much into UFOs and aliens long before I was into Flat Earth. And a lot of people are introduced to this topic in sort of a snow globe, Truman Show dome sort of perspective for some reason. And I think that this sort of model, well, there's not a whole lot of good evidence to support a physical dome in the sky, but it also would sort of turn off or shy away UFO enthusiasts, who there's a lot of them, millions of them, in fact. And so the point that I made is that a flat Earth technically makes UFOs theoretically possible if there are visitors coming from other worlds, and for some reason the government's been covering it up. So just to sort of consensus the panel, had anyone else sort of been into researching UFO phenomenon prior to flat Earth, and how did that affect, or how did flat Earth affect your perspective of the UFO phenomenon?
I know I definitely was at a estate sale when I was like 18 years old, and I bought a bunch of pyramid documentaries from somebody that died, and there was so much about aliens and the pyramids, and I love that stuff, man.
Yeah, yeah, it's intriguing, and you know, if you look back into really even very, very old artwork, you'll see sort of unusual things in the sky that look like UFOs. And so, yeah, if this has been going on a long time, then perhaps it's not the U.S. government just fabricating this thing, and I see them having good reason to cover it up because, you know, when they do make disclosure, and I guess they probably will do it at some point, one of the first questions is going to be, well, where did they come from? And I think that it's the perfect thing for the government to sort of keep people snowed. Right, right. It's the perfect thing for the government to keep people snowed and telling them, well, they came from outer space, of course. Haha, right?
Yeah, yeah. I loved how Hillary Clinton had Scott Kelly and Gabby Gifford like back to back. That was like the only thing I didn't like about the convention.
Oh, yeah. So you watched the Democratic National Convention?
Well, I was on the road. I was on a road trip to Washington, and I listened to it on the way there, on the way back. I can't exactly remember, but maybe while I was there, and yeah, it was pretty cool. I don't know what to say about the whole Hillary Clinton, Donald Trump thing. You know what I'm saying? And I've definitely been trying to do my own fun little presidency thing. That dude I met on the internet, or the dude that found me on the internet today, my buddy Josh, he helped me with my presidential campaign when I was in high school. So fucking, I'm sorry, I'm a little bit out the box, dude.
Well, honestly, I would vote for you before I voted for either Hillary or Donald Trump. So you got my vote. Because I mean, either way, no matter which one of them wins, you know, it's sort of two wings to the same beast. You know, right and left wing. You know, that's how they describe it. And so, regardless of who wins, I've come to the conclusion that we're going to get the same results. The war is gonna continue as, you know, as it's going to continue, regardless. And so,
hey guys, did any of you hear about Jesse Ventura and Howard Stern maybe running
Are
for?
they running? Oh no, competition. That would be cool.
Yeah. No, it's just something I heard some time ago that Jesse Ventura was trying to urge Howard Stern to run with him. Did nobody else hear that?
Yeah, I think they'd have a better chance.
On that, bro.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
But
It's interesting.
so,
If I could add, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I've been back for a while now. I've been sitting here, you know, since Patricia finished talking, I've been sitting here. I don't want you all visualizing me on the toilet on top of everything else that you've been able to visualize me doing. So,
Nice. Dude, we want to, that's
bring the humor down, why not? No, so, yeah, just letting you know I'm back if anybody wants to address anything to me.
Well, after the one dude talks, I'd love to tell you how much I actually enjoyed your video.
Cool. I freaking hated it. It annoyed the bejesus.
Why'd you hate it? It was funny.
No, it's because I have young family, like young children, and that some of their friends have commented on my videos, and I thought, oh. But also,
you're not alone, man. You are not alone.
Yeah, but also there's people like Martin Lidke and Robert Shortman. Their mothers watch my videos. You know, they watch a bunch of videos, and I just thought, oh my God, this is going to offend these people. So I didn't watch more than 6 seconds of the actual thing at first before I got in contact with them and said, freaking pull this right now.
Oh, you didn't make that?
Hey?
What did you do? You just got green screen?
Yeah, you need to go to my channel. There's like a 2-minute video of the other green screen stuff, well, of part of other green screen stuff that we filmed, before processing, where it's literally the green screen, and you'll see how it happened. You'll see what went on.
Basically, what happened was they pre-recorded some stuff, and it was taken out of context, and it was
Oh no!
a buddy
Oh,
of
I'm
his,
sorry
so
that
it was
happened.
sort of a prank, and so it was all in good fun. And I
Yeah.
did mention that technically you could sue them for libel, but I would just say you owe them one in terms of a prank. But Antonio, what were your views on the UFO phenomenon and aliens prior to Flat Earth, and how did Flat Earth affect your perspective on the topic?
Prior to Flat Earth, it was a really good reason to get into astrophysics. I was totally all in with Nassim Haramein. I could understand lots of the principles on electromagnetic propulsion systems, you know, to get from one star to here and all kinds of stuff. Especially when you consider the faster you go, the slower time travel. So if you can travel incredibly fast, then there's no time. So how long it takes to get from one place to another is meaningless. All of that astrophysics, I was all, you know, totally absorbed in it. Now, when I came to the Flat Earth, it was like, oh, dude, they're not coming from the stars. They're coming from over there. You know, just I'm gesturing off to my right. They're just coming off from across somewhere. If they're coming, which I have no reason to doubt, because
Right. Again, and again, we're sort of humoring the notion that this phenomenon is actually occurring, and you know, again, the big question is it the government fabricating this stuff and then covering it up to cause intrigue and lots of speculation, or is it an actual phenomenon that the government's covering up and sort of pointing towards the stars whenever they can in their subsidized documentaries and whatnot? But yeah.
But that's it. I mean, it's even in it's in the Bible. In the Bible, you have the chariots of fire, you have the wheels in the sky, you have the shields in the sky. Alexander the Great, when he did a siege on, I forget which city, they couldn't break in. Eventually, these flying shields appeared, punched holes through the fortress walls, and that's how they got in. There's all kinds of historical.
Yeah, there's even ancient Native American traditions. They called them flying turtles, and yeah, there's lots of accounts from, you know,
Joan of Arc.
Joan of Arc. Yeah.
Yeah, and so if this is real.
It's also the personal experience. Those who've had a personal experience, it kind of takes a whole government is doing this element away when you have a personal experience, because you think, nah, this is something else going on here. And I've had several experiences.
Yeah, well, I'm pretty sure that I've seen a UFO twice. The second time, I don't know. The first time it was like a shooting star that changed directions a couple times and then zipped off. The second time, my wife and I were outside in broad daylight, and there was a silent. It sort of looked like a plane, but it wasn't. It was. It's really hard to tell how high something is when it's a clear day, but it was. It appeared to be a very large cylinder with what looked like, I guess you could say, 4. Like solar panels jutting off from, you know, both sides, 2 on each side. So like a cylinder with sort of like wings, but it wasn't flying. It didn't make any noise, and it zipped from horizon to horizon totally silently within, I would say, less than a minute. So it was either, you know, very high, flying super fast, or very low, you know, flying pretty darn fast, but I'm not sure what it was. So it was certainly a UFO. It wasn't a plane, so by definition a UFO is unidentified, right? So Kristen Wolf, prior to Flat Earth, what was your take on UFO phenomenon, and how did Flat Earth affect your you know, paradigm on that?
Well, I wish I could give a short and simple answer on this, but it's not an easy one, actually. I've done a lot of different...
It isn't.
It is not. I've done a lot of tracks of different sort of investigation over the years prior to finding out about the Flat Earth, and I'd come across a lot of the the line of thinking that you find on YouTube. It's sort of the other side of the debate, from the side that says we have been sort of hybridized to be what we are by aliens and used as a slave race to mine the planet of gold and other resources. That whole kind of thing comes from the, Zachariah Sitchin, and he's, connected to the Vatican. I wanted to point some of that stuff out earlier because it was also relevant to that discussion. Glad we're back on track with that discussion. This is a very interesting topic, and it kind of relates to this, the bigger news lately with to what extent and for how long the Earth has been being strip mined and turned into sort of this giant quarry, if you will. But back to the answer to your question, for me personally, having done these other tracks of research, the other side of the debate is the idea that these so-called aliens are really just double speak or a cover for what is really the fallen angels. And many of you have maybe stumbled onto that same other side of the debate, so to speak, if you know what I'm talking about here, where it's like, are aliens really these beings from other planets that are more advanced, or is this all just a deception, an alien deception, and really it's these fallen angels who can kind of mask themselves to appear to us as these aliens, perhaps, is one theory, and there's competing theories from there, sort of subgroups, if you will, about it. And as happens with these kind of topics where we're stuck with speculating to such a high degree until we can somehow prove something, and even if we could, who's going to listen, and on and on. For me, because I'd gone down the track of that debate and both sides of it and was starting to think maybe it's true that aliens have been this big deception. On the other hand, I was leaving room for the possibility of, hey, well, maybe I haven't gotten the whole story yet. The debate continues. Maybe aliens are just being portrayed to be a certain image to us, which is a scary image, something we wouldn't really want to think about that we might ever evolve into, and so on. And I'm pretty sure people would agree with me there. But whereas aliens may exist, and this is what I said last week, the term alien is really a loose definition, because there's what we've been given to think, and there's what it might really be, which is something possibly extremely different, where aliens might look a lot like us, or much more humanoid, but yet quite different. But certainly not these scary-looking bug or reptilian-looking things. And then there's, but there's just, we could go in 15 directions there too, because there still could be this reptilian race alongside of all these other, what we would call different forms of alien races. And they do say that there's supposed to be some 30-odd different species of aliens, some of them on the side of the debate that totally buy into the idea that we've been hybridized as an alien, half-alien sort of race, or as a very distinctly engineered human race where most of our DNA is apparently shut down, most of our brain function isn't used, and so on. And certainly that's a whole other line of thought. So for me, when the Flat Earth came along, at first I really wanted to, as we see many people doing, believe that, okay, now this means it's really just us here. At first, I really wanted to believe that, and it was very comforting. It was like, okay, it's no longer this kind of threat held over us anymore, that they're going to come from outer space, and it's a matter of time, and it's a big what if, and maybe it'll never happen, but still a lot of people, it creates fear for. And so, and it's one of those we don't speak of kind of the things, right? Because it's like we're, in a way, like you've touched on, they sort of want us to believe in them, and yet they're not fully admitting that they exist yet. And so it's sort of this kind of game that's being played where, it's definitely another divisive thing too, another divisive topic, isn't it? Those that believe in aliens and those that aren't sure yet, and those that definitely don't.
You've got this sure thing in the heliocentric model where if the heliocentric model were true, which it obviously isn't, but most people believe it, but you have this sort of conundrum where space is infinite, and so therefore there must be other life somewhere. There has to be. It's a sure thing, and there's even an equation where they estimate the number of inhabited planets with intelligent life. I forget the name of the formula, but it's there. They've got it, right? And so even with that being said, the possibility or the theoretical plausibility of, you know, one of these other species finding our galaxy, let alone locating our planet, is, you know, infinitesimal. It's not going to happen. It would be like, you know, getting struck by lightning 10 times on the same day. It's not going to happen. So the fact that it is sort of a scary prospect, any rational theoretical physicist is going to say, well, yes, but they're never going to find us, and so they sleep very well at night. Now, on the other hand, you're right, though. It is sort of scary when you think about it in realistic terms, with the Earth being a stationary plane and there are no other, you know, planets or galaxies or any of that out there. However, you're right. There still is this other possibility of other worlds that are, you know, theoretically traversable. You know, it's totally doable to get to there and back, you know, relatively quickly. And so one of the things that is mentioned by UFO enthusiasts is that the UFO videos from the 1950s, the UFOs look sort of boxy and clunky, and as you get through to the 90s and to the teens, they look sort of better and better and more sleek and stylish. And so the whole idea of them, you know, upgrading their craft, as, you know, after they've traversed through, you know, galactic distances, is just sort of ridiculous.
Yeah, can I add in? Well,
sure.
Quick couple points. I agree with everything Christian just said. That was well put together, and, you know, pretty much I agree with the whole dimensions. Now, with, I believe it was Aleister Crowley and Blavatsky that were communing with the so-called said Greys, and I think it was also a lot of the people who practice Satanism have been the ones controlling the movies and the narrative, so that it very well plausibly could be aliens were always set up, you know, that they weren't demons. And the other thing was Plato always spoke of, and you could check it, Plato, Aristophanes, you know, they didn't just profess to talk about the sky. Now, what I'm suggesting is other realms or you know, Earth-like places to our adjacent sides. It's very plausible that what they suggested was the Egyptians, it's the first one I'll say, they believed that if you went west in the ocean, you could sail. Now remember, all I ever hear with the whole changing realms is sailing. You could sail west, and it was a 7-day trip, supposedly, and there were no turns left or right, but you would end up basically in the underworld. This was the Egyptian lore. You would pay the toll to cross the next realm, which would be the next waters. And the other interesting thing was that, you know, you can see with all the ships and the pirate ship movies, they go upside down in one and then they float into the next realm. And there's so many caves and caverns, so my suggestion could be, could you not, maybe it'd be sailing is the way out, not flying. I just wanted to add that in.
Yeah, could be, and I didn't mean to interrupt your train of thought there, Kristen. I know you were still sort of in the middle of something, and I sort of hijacked what you were saying. But if you still had some more, go ahead and continue. I'm so sorry.
Oh, no worries. My goodness, thank you. You just, I was so long-winded there. You kind of rescued me for a moment so I could figure out the rest of it. And thank you. So I really, I ended up coming back around to, well, you know, it's very plausible that obviously we still aren't here alone, even though they're not coming from out there, outer space, other planets, so to speak, even though that's not all still completely answered either. I don't know if they still could be sort of traveling from other, what are still called planets for lack of yet a better term. I like to go back to the old term of wandering stars myself. If that works for people, it works for me. But, you know, I don't know that they're not somehow traveling in their spaceships from the so-called planets, wandering stars. I don't know. We don't have all the answers yet, but still, learning about the other side, the alien, the people that really believe that aliens are real and there's all these different species, it is pretty much, and this kind of speaks to what Ronnie was just saying, and thanks, Ronnie, for the support of what I had said earlier. I'm glad you're here. It is all these other species that, especially the Greys, are thought to definitely be living underground, and so very much terrestrial aliens are very plausibly existing in this realm with us. And so that's another, for me, an unanswered question, but something that seems to me agreeably very plausible. So I don't know what the final answer is, because, okay, this then brings up this whole other thing is, when you look at this idea that it's really the fallen angels deceiving us, there's two schools of thought on what are the fallen angels. One is that they're, again, like I said earlier, they're deceiving us to make us believe they're aliens. And then the other side of it is that people believe the fallen angels were the giants. And so and now we see this same debate being conjured again or brought up again by this resurgence, or this, shouldn't say resurgence, but this huge influx of new information coming from this, I guess, Ukrainian or Russian gentleman with his video that's gone amazingly viral in, what, 2 weeks, barely? And it's bringing up the debate again. Was this giants? Was it aliens? And we
right,
still
and you're talking about that there are no trees on flat Earth, right?
Exactly, and thank you for filling in the blank there, because I should have said more specifically what I was talking about. I'm assuming everybody knows already, and probably most people do, but for those that don't, this theory that these tabletop mesas and these other type of, what we're told are mountain formations of rock, were really these ancient giant trees that were at some point, some of them cut down apparently, some of them broken off by perhaps a cataclysmic event, completely an unknown, completely speculation, but it just has, exploded as far as the minds of flat earthers and anybody open-minded who's looked at it. And I would love to know how many non-flat earthers have taken it seriously, who've looked at it so far, for that matter. But this has created a surge of new research, obviously, and we'll see where it goes from here. Obviously, Ronnie's been involved in some very key discussions recently about it, and they've looked deeply into the giants theory about who is behind it. Let me point out that the man who made the video, either Ukrainian or Russian, I've heard both, I'm not certain, he chose not to reveal his thoughts or hypothesis, as it were, about the who and the how behind these ancient, not just ancient tree stumps, as he points out that he believes they are, but also these apparent quarries, that these, what we call national monuments, these so-called natural wonders, like the Grand Canyon, might actually be, from what he's gathered in evidence to support that theory. So anyway, somebody can pick it up from there, Ronnie or whoever, because you've been involved in the dance part.
I'll pass it over to you, Ronnie, in just a second. A couple things I wanted to touch on really quick. I was watching a video a couple months ago, or maybe, about 2 months ago, from Flat Water, Flat Earth, and he was reading from like an ancient Norse tale of these giants, and just really compressing this down to a nutshell, but these giants who went and cut down all of the trees in what is essentially, what I would relate to as the Garden of Eden. So I think that is really interesting, and I wonder how that plays into these, like, for example, there's that giant plateau right in the middle of Australia, which I've seen it, many times throughout my life, and that's a weird rock formation. But if you consider the hypothesis that it was a giant tree that was cut down, whoever cut that thing down either had to have some pretty high technology, or they had to have been really, really big. We should make a T-shirt. The guy with the hair from Ancient Aliens. The Earth is a globe in the infinite vacuum of space because there are aliens. And I think that the point that I really wanted to drive home today, and it seems like everyone sort of agrees, is that the idea of UFOs and extraterrestrial visitors, for lack of a better word, are not mutually exclusive with flat Earth. And in fact, flat Earth makes the prospect even technically possible or plausible theoretically. One thing that Kristen, that you had also mentioned, was like these multiple species that people are purporting. And again, we're just sort of humoring this hypothesis for argument's sake. We're not all necessarily saying that there are multiple species of aliens visiting Earth, but assuming that there are, then it makes a lot of sense in a flat Earth model where first of all, the diversity of life on Earth is just enormous. There's millions of different species, and we're discovering, for example, new species of insects at such a rate where they deduce that we've only categorized about 10% of the insects in the world. So there's a lot to be discovered, and there's areas deep beneath the sea that we've never explored or mapped. And yeah, there's even a phenomenon of USOs, unidentified submerged objects that are seen from coming out from the ocean, and that's documented really, really far back. So. And again, you mentioned the fallen angels thing, which, yeah, my research did sort of lead me in that direction, to where you could have these beings as the offspring of the Nephilim, and it does sort of make sense in a biblical perspective, because when Lucifer fell, he only brought a third of the angels with him, according to the Bible. So it makes a lot of sense from a biblical perspective that they would want to try and increase their numbers. But anyway, I told Ronnie, and I don't think we got your take on this yet, and I am getting some noise from somebody, I'm not sure from whom, but if y'all could mute. And Ronnie, what was your sort of take on the UFO phenomenon prior to Flat Earth, and how did Flat Earth affect your viewpoint on that phenomenon?
I think it's Tommy. Sorry with the background, brother. Cars running. Okay, there.
There we go.
What's interesting to me that the video that Arnold Forrest brought forth, in my opinion, was another angle and another part of this realm to investigate. I was fascinated with comparisons of the tree and with the mining, and he displayed, modern day mining. The other question that I had, a lot of people noticed, was the nuclear idea that there had some sort of nuclear catastrophe. And for me, the interesting thing is, I believe in fire.
You're breaking up a little bit, Event Skeptic. Is there any way you can up your mic a little bit, or?
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to state that, I don't really believe in the so-called new theories. I don't believe in that type of energy. I think it's all a ruse to create fear. But I do believe that fires have happened, and that the product of these great fires could easily have been the petrification of some of these stones. And, a lot of people are jumping on top of him saying that, oh, he's a nuke pusher. I didn't agree with that part of the video. And the other parts of the video that I found really interesting were just the mining on the massive scale, and, the quarries that are left. If they are, in fact, quarries, how much of a sick joke would it be to, name it a monument or a protected park? So,
Yeah, what I thought was interesting too is that all of the places are somehow like the names of them are connected, like devils, whatever, devils this. It's all sort of foreboding sounding to keep people, like, I guess superstitious people away from it, right?
And lastly, I just wanted to say, I have been trying to share my work and other flat earthers, some in the call and some that aren't, with other nationalities. I've been sending them to Russian. I've been going on videos that are Chinese, and multiple different languages, and converting the text, leaving a message, putting a link to, let's say, one of your videos, John, about angular momentum. Kristen's, viewing her horizon shot, video, and the Russian guy. I'm proposing that he's Russian because I believe that Lori Fair has been in contact with him quite a bit, and he apparently is Russian. And they were one of the first ones to jump on board, and now they're starting to present some pretty good videos and ideas, and it's great to see people from another part of the world getting involved. And that's the other part of the last quote I'll make about this video is I've seen people that have mocked the flat earth to no end, and as soon as they saw clips from that video, they were able to go, and they were like, well, maybe if this is true, maybe we do live on a flat plane, because having a, you know, a 50 or a 60-mile tree just absolutely does not make sense on a rotating ball. So, you know, keep open-minded, and let's, you know, hopefully these Russian guys, you know, really want the same freedoms that we do, and they have a great thing to add. That's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, it was awesome. I liked the video, and you know, again, I'm sort of the type of person where I have to go and see and touch something for myself. So I definitely want to check out one of those alleged ginormous tree stumps for myself. But yeah, it's definitely an intriguing concept. And yeah, so anyway,
Actually, John,
Mhm.
I sent a couple things to you on Facebook. If you wanted to use them as screenshots, I don't know. I made a couple of memes about this, what we're just talking about now, and a post explaining a certain couple of aspects about it, and left links for people for the original video and also a really well done re-narrated version of it, which I believe is on a couple different channels. I forget the lady's name now. It's on her channel. She actually was the narrator of it. And I believe it's also on David Weiss's channel. And then there's another couple of videos I put there, which are a kind of a breakdown about it by a woman. Can't remember her name right now either. I'm brand new to both of these women's names, and they both have unique names that haven't yet stuck with me. So I'm just familiarizing myself with their channels for the first time, actually, in the last couple of days. But this woman has done a part 1 and 2 of a really interesting breakdown from her analysis of it. And it's called, the title of the video, you know, No Force on the Flat Earth Decoded. And it's very interesting. Apparently she's done decoding of films and around the idea of how they like to hide things and give away truths through movies in the form of so-called fiction. So very interesting.
Sorry to interrupt you. A great question I could ask you, Kristen. How would you believe that the rocks formed, and maybe the rest of the panel as well? Because, you know, I've always pondered, you know, how did they get that way? Because lava is really light, the rock is really dense, right?
Indeed. Well, I had never looked into anything related to how lava forms before, but certainly, okay, I have a very big challenge with the notion that lava could have hardened in those formations. And actually, the other meme that I shared the link for speaks to that question. It's the one with the apparent possible giant tree stump that I sent John, if you want to share that other one, because
Yeah.
it would be more easy to relay. My point here is actually looked up on Wikipedia. Oh, pardon the echo. I hope it clears up. Let's see. Okay, I looked up on Wikipedia about Devil's Tower and how they define what it is, how it was formed. They're not even sure. Just go and read it. So I put the link to the Wikipedia of it for people to just go read it for themselves. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's like a couple guys decided a couple 100 years ago that this must have happened. It must have been lava, you know, that pushed up and just hardened like that or something. And so there's no true consensus, but it's like anything else where it may or may not have gone through what they call peer review, where a bunch of scientists said, well, that theory sounds good, so we'll just go with it like it's a fact, you know. But this is how this kind of propaganda gets going, where as far as we know, we're just told things that this is how it is, and we don't understand it because they usually don't explain it, and that's reality as far as we know. It's ridiculous. But so now when we look at this, if we don't at least have cause to question that could have been a giant tree stump, I would find it hard to believe if somebody doesn't see that has to be questioned. Anyway, so
the Cheyenne Indian of Wyoming, where the Devil's Tower is, call it the Stone Tree. You know, these are people that lived there for a long time, and they call it the Stone Tree. Now,
You're
could
not
this be
presenting.
because it looks like a stump, or you know? But what you're saying about the lack of peer review, absolutely. Once people determined that volcanoes make landmass, any landmass is ipso facto made by volcanoes, even all the landmass there isn't. So, you know, chances of this being peer reviewed, pretty much zero, considering it was so long ago. And anybody revisiting this and changing the paradigm that it was made by volcanoes would simply just lose their careers in geology. That's all that would happen. We know this from Lloyd Pye and the alternative archaeologists. We know that whenever anybody rocks the boat of the consensus, they're outed. So this is a good reason. I think that this video was made. It's a really good catalyst for having people looking at this, either geologists that are professional or people who are just interested in geology, because you don't have to be a professional geologist to find truth, just like you don't have to be a professional physicist to find truth. So I say more power to the guy who brought this, and more power to anybody who studies it. I'm not. I'm in the UK. We do have petrified trees here in the UK, but they're nothing like that, nowhere near as big.
Yeah, I've seen petrified trees that were, you know, very small, you know, radius. They look just like regular, I don't know, oak trees or something, but nothing to that caliber. But when you do look at the several examples in that video, it really sort of makes you scratch your head, and it really makes me want to buy a plane ticket and go see for myself some of these places. But yeah, it's certainly compelling. And in terms of lava, you know, what we've always sort of been taught in the heliocentric geology, that the spinning globe Earth exists around a molten core, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense because, you know, structurally molten lava isn't exactly ideal. But I think that maybe, you know, deep beneath the Earth, the tremendous amount of pressure just would cause you know, solid rock to just melt under the pressure alone. I mean, I could see that being plausible, and at some point that has to be released. That pressure, or that molten, you know, bubbling rock has to be released, and so you have volcanoes. But these formations don't look anything like volcanoes, and they really do look like trees. And the strangest thing about them, if you watch that video again, is the perfect hexagonal shape, you know, six-sided sort of square shape of all those little, I guess you could say, fibers, for lack of a better word, which is, you know, I've never seen lava behave like that. So when you look at Wiki on that sort of thing, it really does make you scratch your head and wonder, you know, did someone just randomly pick this explanation and everyone just agreed? Or and I think what it is there's just so much riding on it. I mean, people have their careers built on, you know, writing about theories and saying that things are facts, and agreeing and concurring, and of course all these people would be discredited if something like this were to come out. So they're, you know, it's not good for the status quo. It's not good for the establishment when certain things are changed, and to me that's a shame, because I think, and well, science should be the pursuit of truth. It shouldn't be the, you know, preservation of dogma to save people's reputation.
Absolutely. Do you know who I think would be ideal for looking at this further? Michael Tellinger, the guy who's been doing all the Ubuntu system and the talk about the ancient structures in Africa with these stone rings which are interconnected, looking like grapes, where hitting one stone in this configuration sends reverberations all the way across. That guy, he seems to know a bit about stone, and I think, you know, he's talking about ancient cultures that had ancient technologies in ancient days. Perfect for him, because these are ancient trees.
Yeah, they could be. I'd have to go and poke one for myself and take a sample.
Yeah, that's the thing, and I'm sure people will do, and I'm looking forward to finding, you know, what their research uncovers. If it turns out there's a natural formation of mineral that will create that without ever going through an organic phase, then cool. But that we have quarries, that we have ancient quarries, that's pretty much undeniable. It's just, when you look at open cast mining that's done right now today by humans, and you look at what these places look like, it's indistinguishable. All you have to do is change the magnification so that you can't see which is bigger, and they're indistinguishable. There's ancient places that look absolutely indistinguishable from modern open cast mining. What the heck's gone on there? You know, it's just it's a curious thing. And I think the guy who made the Flat Earth, no forests on Flat Earth video, put Flat Earth in there because he knows Flat Earthers are the ones that have the kind of inquiry mind where they're not going to care whether people call them crazies or retards or whatever. You know, that at least they're going to look, investigate, find some truth, some element of truth, and, you know, talk about it. If we find that it's from a truth angle, there's a crystalline formation that does not have to go through organic growth, then that will be the answer. You know, they just formed like this. They just happen to look like trees. But the open cast mining, that's a different question altogether.
One thing I know is that crystalline structures, and I am feeding back a little bit, thanks. Crystalline structures are able to sort of contain data. I'm sure you guys have heard of the crystal skulls. And if crystalline structures are able to sort of record or you know, retain data, then suppose, you know, just for argument's sake, that they're able to obtain some form of DNA. And crystals are already sort of fractal and self-replicating in so many ways. But if you could sort of imagine some type of a DNA code involved with the crystal, and you know, perhaps these ancient trees, if that's what they were, could have been the precursor to, you know, the regular flora that we're used to seeing. I mean, who knows? But yeah, I think anything's possible, and you know, I'm pretty sure that we have the technology with all of the, you know, electro-scanning microscopes and that sort of thing to take another look at these structures and see what they are. But it would, you know, it would cost a lot of money, and it would you'd have to have the state-of-the-art equipment, and perhaps, you know, it'll get that sort of scrutiny. But if it's just sort of a semi-precious stone, then geologists are going to assume, well, it's, you know, it's some type of rock formation. But yeah, how bizarre, right?
Indeed.
Sorry,
yeah,
I was
the
muted.
idea, he kind of posits the theory that the Earth is this kind of giant quarry at this point, that there might not be any the original top layer left to it. And actually, I just want to point out really quick, the one other link I included on that post, if you open it up, I don't know if you want to bother to open it up, or if people will be able to see the links or not, because they'll be small, but there's all these links, right, that I mentioned what all of them are except for one. It's the link that I mentioned last week, or the video I mentioned last week, where this...
Now, is this the Grand Canyon picture, or the one with the rock formation, the tree thing?
The one you're on right there. Open up the rest of it for those links. And,
right here?
Oh, just on the little see more.
Ah.
There you go.
Okay.
There you go. And if you, I don't know, if you scroll down, you might be able to get to where the links are. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I just noticed real quick a good point. Like, if you can see this range right here, you can tell that is very, very far away. I'd say maybe, what, 50 miles greater? And the fact that you can perfectly see the sort of, you know, the bottom curving up to the tops there is, yeah, they're certainly lacking the curvature that you'd expect on a spherical Earth. Not to interrupt, just thought I'd bring that up.
That's excellent. Yeah, you can certainly see we're seeing the land meet the base of the mountains, as you're pointing out, right? And so there's no, yeah, well, that doesn't, I don't know. Never mind. Okay. Sorry. I can't begin to say that clearly at this moment because I had something else in mind to say, but that was an excellent point. And so the other video I just wanted to mention to people is this video that never went viral, but it came out some 6 months ago, I think, if I'm recalling correctly, by a supposed Russian scientist. It's about a half hour long, and he's covering this idea of the Earth having been mined and turned into many quarries of different kinds in a different way than this video does. And it's more focused on the ocean floor, actually, and then his hypothesis that the aliens are behind it. And so I just would hope people might check out that video, because it really could go viral too, to get it out there more, obviously, for more people to be taking into consideration the scope of the mining that we're talking about. Because in that video, he I think he traveled to the Dominican Republic, and there's all those islands out there, and he was able to see from the plane, and then he ended up studying it on Google Earth about how the ocean floor had clearly been leveled at one place and pushed, the material pushed to the sides, making a kind of a rectangular border very clear to anyone looking at it. But that what the material that they pushed to the sides did was create those land masses, those islands that are somewhat mountainous that people live on. It's just it just puts a whole other layer on this entire concept that we're now investigating, all of us. And so, to whatever degree we've looked into this yet, but I hope that we all continue to look and really keep open-minded, because we deserve the truth about where we live, and it's not the end of the world if really it's just a giant quarry. It's not the end of the world. We still have trees that are pretty big compared to the scale of what we are, even though this guy is saying they're just bushes compared to, obviously, the scale of the trees that used to exist, if his theory is correct. But it just brings up so many keys to the whole truth that we're really trying to get to, after all. You know, the flat Earth certainly wasn't the last piece of the puzzle by a long shot. And so I think this really needed to happen. And some people are questioning the timing of it, and I can't help but question it a little bit too, but I feel like the timing, in essence, is a positive thing overall. And I wonder what any of you might say to that.
Well, and it seems to me, you know, geology, and this is a good example here, geology would say that these different layers of sort of sediment that you see is caused by this river here, you know, over the years, you know, ebbing and flowing, just sort of carving out this low river basin that you've got here. And that very well may be true. But in that video, the no forests on flat Earth video showed some good examples of what appeared to be quarries. Now, that could be what parts of this are. I mean, it does sort of resemble a quarry, but it does make you sort of wonder, you know, these layers here, because these are, you know, horizontal layers. Obviously, on the trees one, they were more like vertical layers. All these are horizontal layers. And so, you know, geology would also say that sort of every year we collect, I don't know how many million tons of space dust. You could probably wiki it, and there's some figure that they claim that, you know, sediment just sort of falls onto the Earth. And so we sort of have, you know, a growing of the Earth, and then an eroding away of the Earth depending on the season, and that's where you get these sort of lines. And of course, regular trees as we know them have grow rings, so that would be another sort of way that you could possibly tell whether this was a tree or how old it was when we're talking about like this other image here. Like if you could get on top of this thing, if it was sort of an annual growth sort of a tree, you might expect to see rings of growth, but I don't know. It's sort of not exactly the type of tree that you're used to seeing, so it may follow completely different rules, especially if it is some sort of a crystalline situation. Another thing, you know, that I remember in my research over the years prior to Flat Earth is the conventional explanation that has some pretty good evidence to back it, in terms of how the Hawaiian Islands are formed, and how they're, even today, it's very active that there's new land being formed by volcanic activity in the Hawaiian Islands, like even, you know, right up till today. And the way that it was explained, it's maybe sort of hard to explain without visualizing, but if you can sort of imagine the underwater surface of the Earth as very slowly sliding, I think, towards the west. Just the land mass itself just sort of slowly, very slowly over the years sliding towards the west, and underneath of that land mass there's, I guess you could say, another mass or another sort of mass that it floats upon with an opening in it, and that opening allows all of this molten lava up and through to the upper layer. And as the layer that the islands are on sort of flows towards the west, you get almost like a I don't know, like a SOS, you know, and it's forming the islands over the years slowly as this landmass goes over that fault in the underlying mass. And so, you know, you get to thinking about it, how is that even possible on a globe? And it really sort of doesn't make sense. But in a flat Earth perspective, that does. So there is a lot to geology and volcanism and, you know, volcanic activity that makes a lot of sense, and there's good evidence to back it up. But something like this, you know, that we're looking at here, it does. It seems totally different. So it's very, very interesting and definitely worth further research for sure. Yeah.
Guys, sorry to jump in like this. I'm going to have to drop out, guys. I'm going to carry on listening, but I've got some map drawing to do. So I'm going to drop out if that's okay. And good luck with the rest of the show. I'll be listening.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a matter of fact, I was probably getting ready to wrap it up pretty soon anyway, unless y'all did want to continue talking. If Event Skeptic mentioned something about wanting to talk about the maps. That's up to you guys, but we can wrap it up unless y'all had anything else you wanted to talk about.
No, I think the other guys are having problems with their connections. I'm happy to wrap it up now, but if you carry on, then I'm happy to listen, you know.
Yeah, well, anyways, I guess, yeah, we've gone on over 2 hours, so it's a good time to wrap it up. I want to thank all the panel members for joining, all the live listeners. You guys are great. Thank you so much for joining. It's been a great Saturday afternoon hanging out with you guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the Morgile and my secondary and tertiary channels if you haven't already. And y'all be good. We'll talk to you next weekend. Kristen Wolf, and I'm glad you came back in. I was just wrapping it up. And if you want to say anything before we wrap up, that'd be great.
Oh, I was just glad to join in, John, today. I wasn't planning to, just because busy day today, but I'm glad I was able to join after all. It's a bit too hot to work outside, and so this was a great excuse to take a break. Thank you so much. It's been fun, and I hope that people will check out look into the things we talked about today.
Yeah, definitely. It was a great show. Had a lot of fun, and I'll be doing it again on Saturday, so I hope to see you guys again. Y'all be good, and have a great rest of your weekend.
Thanks, you too. Thanks, John.